Hello guys, welcome to React lesson. In this lesson, we are going to build a simple application. The application we are going to build is what you can see on the screen. This app is for foreign exchange rates. Basically, the app fetches the FX rate, that is the foreign exchange rate, from third-party API. That is what we can see on the screen. So these data are not hard-coded. Instead, they are coming from those REST APIs. You can actually search for currency pairs, for example, Australian dollar, USD, Nigerian naira. As you can see, while you are typing, the search is happening, right? So it's a simple but interesting application. Before we get started, I want to quickly mention that this lesson is intended for someone who knows the basics, the very basics of JavaScript and React, right? At least you understand what is component and what is props, that kind of thing. With that knowledge, you'll be able to follow along. Alright, so with that in mind, let's get started. To get started, let's go ahead and create a new React app using create React app, right? So the npx create React app is available provided you have Node.js and npm installed. Like I said, this lesson assumes that you know at least the very basics of React. So my assumption is that you already understand how to just open the command line or terminal and type this command to create a new React application. So we basically say npx create React app. You can call the app anything you like, for example FX rates, and you hit enter. We wait for the application to be created. That might take a little while. Now go ahead and open the new project in the code editor of your choice, for example in VS Code. This is the new project open in VS Code. Let's get started with writing some codes. What I actually want to do is to npm start to start the React application. And first thing first, I would like to delete these items here. Actually, let me take from here. Delete all that, we don't need that. Remember that I said we are going to fetch the data from a third-party API. So inside the source folder, I'm going to create another folder. Let me call that services. Then inside services, I'm going to create a file, fxservice.js. And inside fxservice.js, let me make a function const. Let me actually export that function, const fetch exchange rate to be a function. So what I want to do here is to use fetch API to make a call to the third-party API for getting the FX data. So I will say, because the fetch API returns a promise, it means we are going to use async await, right? So the function has to be declared async, and we say await fetch. Here I will paste the URL of the FX data API endpoint, which is also in the description. This is the URL. Now we just return JSON response, JSON data from the response, and that is it for this function. Back to app.js, what I want to do is to make use of the fx data we just made a function for. So the first thing I want to do here is to import all as React from React. Then inside here, inside this function, I can say const rate set rate to be equal to react dot use state. So this is to manage the state of the fx rate. This holds the rate. This is for setting the rate. The next thing I want to do is to use the use effect hook. Use effect. Inside the use effect, what I want to do is to call this function, the function we have inside the fx service file. So I will say fetch, actually not like that, I will say const get fx data to be a function. Inside that function, we go ahead and say fetch foreign exchange rate. Make sure to import that function from the fx service file, the function we are calling down here. Because this function returns a promise, we have to say dot then rate data. You can call it anything you want, it doesn't matter. So you can say rate data or just data. And in case of any error, you can just for now console.log error. So this will give us the whatever data that is returned from that API. For now, I can just say fx data, just log it to the console to be data. The use effect should take a callback because we want to call this only once when the component is mounted. So it takes, actually I meant a second parameter which should be an empty array, right? So let's go ahead and call the function get fx data. Then we go back and inspect the page, check the console. Let's scroll up a bit, zoom in a little bit, and expand this as well. So you can see that we have the fx data. This is what we are particularly interested in. Now let me quickly explain one more time what exactly is going on. We have the React use effect hook here. Inside it, we made this simple function. What this function does is that it basically calls the function fetch exchange rate that we have in the fx service file. This is the function call. Because that function returns a promise, that is why we are using the dot then to get whatever data that the function returns, right? And down here, we call this very function get fx data. We pass the second argument to the use effect hook such that the use effect runs whatever that is inside here only when the component is created. That is the result we have here based on the console.log, this line of code. So at this point, we are sure that we are getting the fx data from the third-party API. Let's go ahead and make use of the data that we fetched. If you look at the data, the response data, you can see we have the key rates, which is an object with all these FX rates inside it. So back to the use effect. At this point where we got the data, what I want to do is to call set rate. I will say data dot rates. That will give us the rate. But before doing that, you want to be sure that the component is mounted before you update the state, right? So inside the use effect, I'm going to create let component is mounted to be true. And down here, I will return. This is where we do some cleanup, right? We say component is mounted to be equal to false. Before we actually set the data, we want to be sure that the component is mounted, so we don't get memory leak or warning, that kind of thing that you see in the console sometimes. At this point, we expect that rates should have some data inside it. So let's come down here and say FX rate. What I want to do is to first check if rates, because initially rates will be null based on the use state we have up there. If rate has some data, we do something, otherwise we display nothing. If you look at the rate data, you will notice that this is an object, not an array, right? It means that when we call set rate data.rate, what we have inside rate is an object, not array. So coming down here, what I'm going to do is to loop through the object keys, and then with map we can display something on the screen. So I will say object dot keys for rate, then dot map key for each of the keys. So here I will return, or let me remove the curly braces and use the parentheses instead. Inside the parentheses, for now, I will just do h3. What I will do here is rate key. Save. So we get the data that is for the exchange rate, right? This is rate, this is the key. The key is something like AED, FN, LL, all that. But this is not the way we want to display the data. What I want to do next is to create a component. I'm going to make another folder inside the source folder, and we call that component. Inside the components folder, I'm going to create a file fxitem.js. Inside fxitem.js, I want to create a function component, const fxitem. This will be an arrow function. What do we want to do? I'm going to return a div with some other, it's a div. Inside this div, first for the currency, the currency symbol, so that is the key in the FX rate data. I will actually take prop. So we can say props dot key. Then I will have another one for the value, for the exchange rate value. Now we can say props dot value, or I can call this FX symbol so it is clear. As for this one, we can call it FX rate, right? But we can actually use object destructuring to get both FX symbol and FX rate. So instead of typing props dot all the time, we can actually do this like this. Finally, I want to export default FX item. Come on, FX item. Back to app.js. What I want to do is, instead of this h3 here, I'm going to return FX item that we just created. Make sure that is imported, right? The FX item expects some props. So we are going to pass the FX symbol. In this case, that corresponds to the key, and FX rate, which we can get from the rate and then the key. We save that, we go back, you can see we have both the rate, both the symbol and the rate, but this is looking ugly. Let's add some styling to it. Before we style what we have on the screen, you will notice that I have an error, a warning in the console. So the warning is basically saying that when we have something like this iteration here, this loop, each of the items is supposed to have unique key, right? Because the FX items keys are unique, we can actually make use of that here. I will save, and I expect that the warning will go away, so we don't have that warning anymore. For the styling, I will go to, let me go to app.css. I will remove every single thing here. What I want to do is to paste some predefined CSS, so to save us some time. This is just the styling I want to use in this application. You can copy that or get it from the Git repository linked in this lesson in the description. And then I want to make this module CSS, or what is it called? Module CSS. So basically, instead of saying app.css, I want to say app.module, not that, module.css. So we have app.module.css. Going back to, let me start from the FX item. Here I want to import the CSS file. So I will say import styles from ... go into app.module.css. That is imported, so we go one step up and we get to the CSS file. I want to make use of the imported CSS, so I will just say class name to be equal to styles.card. This is how we use the CSS because we declared it as a module. We can set styles.something. Save. Why do I have an error? So I have an error because I also imported the CSS file in app.js. We have to rename this to app.module.css, just like we did in FX item. We say styles from that, and the error should go away. Still in app.js, let's do a little bit of styling. For this div, I will change this to styles, the styles we just imported .app. I will save that. We get the background color and something close to what we're supposed to have. This is coming from the style sheet from the CSS file. I will go back to components, fx item. Let's add a little more styling here. So you can see that these are together. We want some kind of space there. What I want to do is to actually add a class. I will change this from span to bold, and this should be strong, bold. Then for this, I will add a class to be styles.rate. These are all coming from the CSS file. Save, we have the spacing, and this is a little bit bold. But the FX rate is supposed to have something we are comparing it against, right? If it is an Australian dollar, it's supposed to be /USD. USD is the base currency we are doing the comparison against. So I will go back to app.js. We're going to have another state, const. Let's call this rate base, which is USD. I'll say set rate base to be react.useState. For now, let's should we make this empty? At the point where we are setting the rate, we also have other information. We have the base currency. You can see when I open this, the base is USD. So we can also call set base, and we say data.base. Now we can pass the rate base as a prop to fx item. So we say rate base to be equal to rate base. We open the fx item. Now we have the rate base. We can basically say slash. Let's get that first from the props. We say slash, save, go back. Now we have /USD, which is the best currency, because if you take a look at the URL, this is how you specify the base currency, right, as a param in the URL. Now let's work on the search functionalities. We want to be able to search currency pairs. What I will do is to open app.js. Right after the heading, I want to have an input field. Let's leave that like that for now. I will go up to create some state variables. A state variable for holding the search term. Search term set search term to be react.useState. Initially, it is going to be an empty string. Back to the input field, I will set the value to be whatever search term. Then I want to have a function that is called whenever the search term changes. Let's call that on search. I will go up to make that function const on search to be an arrow function. This will take event, so that with event.target.value we can actually get whatever that is imputed in that input field. Basically, you want to set search term to be event.target.value. So whatever that is imputed here is what we are going to get with event.target.value. I also want to have a CSS style for this class name to be styles.input, one of the classes in the CSS file, and as well as placeholder that, let's say, search. I will save this. Let's see how that looks. Okay, not bad. The next thing we are going to do is to make a function for searching FX rate. Over to the fxservice.js file, let's export another function. What do we call that? Search FX rate. This will be an arrow function with two parameters. The first one will be FX rate data, and the second will be the search term. What is the person searching for? So we expect that the person will be searching for something in the input field. If, however, search term dot trim, let's check if it is empty. So we say search term dot trim dot length. If that is 0, that means the person did not input anything. This should be 3 equality sign. We basically return. If, however, there is something to search for, we want to create a variable called results. This is going to be an array that will hold whatever that matches the search term. The next thing is to actually, this should be an object, because the data we are working with to display this is in object format, not array. So let's make this an object. What we want to do is to iterate over the rate and find whatever that matches the search term, put it inside the result, and finally return the result. So to do that, because the rate is an object, not an array, we are going to use object.entries. You'll see that in a moment. So let's actually do that. Const key value of object.entries rates. This is one of the ways you can iterate over an object, and this will give us both the key and the value. The key and value actually refers to what we have here. This is the key, this is the value. We expect that the user will be searching the currency symbol, right, which is the key, according to the data that we have here. Let me open the data one more time. So this is the console. Remember that we have the FX data in this form. The rate, it is an object, which is why we are using object as our result, and we have the key, the value. So we expect the user to search that key. We are going to check if the key contains the search term. Basically, we are going to say if key dot includes search term, what do we do? Results key to be equal to value. Finally, actually outside the loop, we want to return the results. But because the user might be typing in uppercase, lowercase, right? We just want to match the results case insensitive. What we can do quickly is to actually maybe turn this to uppercase. Key dot to uppercase, as well as search term dot to uppercase. This way, if the user is typing whether it is uppercase or lowercase or mixing both of them, that does not affect our result. Back to app.js, let us go ahead and import search FX rate, the function. To make use of that, I will come down here and make another use effect call, react.use effect. What we are going to do here is to check if the search term changes. So this will take second argument, which will be the search term. Whenever the search term changes, we want to call the function to search FX rate and then set whatever that function results as our search result. So up here, I'm going to have another state variable to hold the search result. Search result, set search result to be equal to react.use state. Initially, it is going to be null, just like we have for the rates. Back to the use effect. What I want to do is to check if this holds any value, if the search form holds any value before I call the function to search. So basically, we say if search term dot trim dot length, the trim is to remove any empty space. If this is greater than 0, it means that the person is searching, right? So the result will be equal to search, FX rate. This will take the rate data which we already have and the search term which we also have. The function will return the result. So basically we say set search result to be that result. Come on, what am I typing? Actually, we can bring this inside the set search result. Bring that inside here. That will give us the same thing. If, however, the input field is empty, we still want to call set search result to be rate. The reason we are doing that is when the person is typing, we are searching. If, however, this becomes empty, maybe the person deletes the search term, we don't want to leave the result empty. We want to have all the FX data when this is empty. We get this warning that we need another dependency to be here, that is rate, right? Because we have both rate and the search term as the dependencies for the use effect. So basically add rates there. As it is now, if I go to the search and try to search, we are not actually going to get anything. AUD, nothing is happening because we are not making use of the search results yet. What we are going to do is to come down here. Instead of making use of the rate, we are going to replace that with the search results. Remember that both of them hold the same type of data, right? The same object of the FX rate. Therefore, we can come down here. Instead of making use of the rate, which is what we are making use of currently, we can replace this with search results. Search results. We also replace this and finally this. Save that, go to the form, refresh this, we get the same exact result because both rate and search result hold the same data. Since search results and rate hold the same data, why can't we just use rate instead of making another variable search results? Actually, the reason I had to do that is because we want to call the endpoint to get FX rates only when needed. What I mean by that is, if for example as the user is typing AU, by the way our search functionality is already working, if as the user is typing we keep calling this endpoint, the endpoint might limit the number of times we are going to call it, the rate limiting. So the endpoint might say you can only call me 10 times per minute. We don't want to exceed that 10 times per minute, right? There could be that limit. So as the user is typing, if you keep calling the endpoint, you are going to hit that limit and there will be an error or no result here. What we want to do, however, is to call this endpoint when needed. For example, when the app loads, that is what we are doing here. When the component is mounted, then we store the rate inside the rate state variable, this very one. But when we are searching, we are actually making use of the data that we fetched initially. Recall that down here, what we are passing to this function called search FX rate is the rate data we fetched only once, right? Only when needed. This function, actually, this is not calling the endpoint. This search FX, you can see that it is not calling the endpoint to get FX data. Instead, it is making use of whatever that is passed to it, which over here is the same data we fetched earlier. This way, we can search without calling the endpoint over and over again. The next question, however, will be, what if the original data itself has changed? What if the rate has been updated? There are different ways we can actually handle cases like that. Basically, what we want to do is to call getFX data again, right? For example, this is where we fetch the data initially. So load initially. What we can do, for example, is we can use set interval. Basically, we can say after every minute or after every 2 minutes, call the same method, the same function again. We can do something like fetch interval to be equal to set interval. This is going to take the function we are going to call at the whatever interval. After that, we are going to have what will be the interval, what will be the time. So we can say 1000 times 60. This is in milliseconds, the 1000. So the time is in milliseconds. So this will give us 60 seconds. That is 1 minute. It means that every 1 minute, this function will be called again to get the data from the API. But very important is to remember to clear interval. So when the component is not mounted, we want to clear this interval. Very important. With this, we are refreshing the data every minute. If I go over here, you might not notice anything when the data is refreshed. What I want to do is to actually inspect, go to the console, zoom a little bit. Let me change this so it is a bit faster. Let's say after every 2 seconds. Save that. You can see we get data. So the data is being refreshed every 2 seconds. It is actually so fast that we might not notice anything here. The user might not notice anything. But you can see in the console that function is being called every 2 seconds. But 2 seconds is too quick, so I will change this back to 60 seconds. That is 1 minute. If I refresh this, you notice that it is going to take a minute before that function is called again. Alright guys, so far so good. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so. And this will bring us to the end of this lesson. Until next time, happy coding.